15. Actually, I'm sorry, 58, 57 and 58, verses 57 and 58 in the book of 1 Corinthians. While we're going there, I want to say also that we appreciate Sister Keisha. Sister Keisha told me that she was going to head up the I Can, One Can. And so we needed a head for it, And so I so appreciate you, Sister Keisha. And so she'll probably be contacting you and just kind of reminding everybody, when you go to the store, pick up something. Just pick up something and put it in that basket back there, and so that we can continue to do what it is that we do for the people in the community. It's really important. Remember, the Bible, Jesus said, I was hungry, and you gave me. Okay, don't get in that too far today. Okay, all right, what does it say, preacher?
1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 57 through 58. But thanks be to God, which gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
So, Paul is addressing the Corinthian church. And he said to them, thanks be to God that gives us the victory. And I went over the course of time, Sister Carmela, to explain really what the victory is. What victory do we have that we're saying thanks, Sheila, to God for? What victory? And he said, so not only since we have the victory, preacher, since we got the victory, be steadfast. Since you got the victory, preacher, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. Why? Because you know. Rick, you know it, man. This is something you got to know. That your labor, Brenda, is not in vain. Amen. In the Lord. You got to know this. Otherwise, you'll get so discouraged so quick. Your labor is not in vain in the Lord. Now, as we approach this and we get involved in this, it is really important that we get a good understanding so we can know. Okay, so there are basically, I probably ought to turn it on. It probably helped to turn this on. There are basically 9 things that I would like us to consider as we go through this process, this 3-Sunday process. There's 9 things that I'd like us to consider. And so I'm going to list them, but we're going to start going through them. And the first one is that there are some very intelligent people that believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You just kind of need to know that this is not a bunch of people that are not intelligent, that are just don't know. There are some which the world would have you think. Am I making sense? There is a huge community of intelligent people that actually believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, I'm going to just talk about 4 of them today, but you need to know that there's a huge community of people that actually believe in this. Second thing I want us to understand is that the resurrection was foretold. The resurrection was foretold. In other words, before it happened, Jesus talked about it. Amen. He talked about it before it happened. We want to look at that. And the third thing we want to look at is the historical basis of the resurrection. Here is what we have to understand about the resurrection and these. the whole story of the resurrection is that it is founded and proven in historical evidence. So what you never want to do is let people take you to scientific. You can never prove this scientifically. We want to talk about this. We want to make sure we understand this, because this is where people mislead, especially in colleges, Inez. Those professors, whether or not God is real, all of those kinds of things, they try to take you to a scientific method. And I want to talk a little bit about the scientific method versus historical evidence. Because there's a lot, you can't prove the existence of faith scientifically. Neither can you prove that there is no God scientifically. Is this making sense? So we want to talk a little bit about that. I don't want to get caught right there right now. But we'll talk about that. We got 3 days to deal with it. And the resurrection of Jesus Christ is attractive to an intelligent faith. Let me say it again. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is attractive to an intelligent faith. Now I hope that we understand this, because the basis and the whole foundation of faith it starts with this. You don't have a reason to have faith if this isn't true. Is that making sense? The whole foundation, the building blocks of faith, begins with the account of the resurrection. So God made sure when he presented all of this that it was enough evidence in here that you could grasp. Rosie, you could take this to court and prove it. This is what we're talking about, Carmela. The ability to take this to a court of law and prove it. Without that ability, our faith is shaky. Making sense? Because it's from here that we walk by faith, but we need to know this. Oh, I hope I said something. I think I said something then, and I think I might need to say it again. It's pretty important. We walk by faith and not by sight. Everybody with me? Yes. But you need to know this. You need to know this. Before you walk without seeing, you might want to know this. I hope I'm helping you today. Let me go a little bit further. The next thing I want to talk about is don't make the mistake of excluding the possibility of miracles as we look at this, because just because miracle is not part of our normal experience. Anybody in here omniscient? I think that's the knowing all, right? Say it for me. Omniscient is the know all things. Nobody know that but God. The only one that's omniscient is God. Isn't that right? So can I help you with this? If you're not say it for me. If you're not omniscient, don't exclude the possibility of something you don't know about just because you don't know about it. That's right. Because that's where they're quick to take you on in college campus. Well, show me a miracle. Quick to take you there. Making sense? Okay, let's go a little bit further. I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about the actual people that God used to provide evidence for the resurrection, understood the difference between facts and fairy tales, between fact and fable. You kind of want to know that the people that you are presenting for evidence kind of know the difference between facts and fairy tales. They're not talking about a fairy tale somebody told them. Is this making sense? My thing, Sheila, is when we sit down on Christmas to eat our Christmas dinner, I want to make sure we know why we celebrate. I don't mind Easter eggs. Ain't nothing wrong with them. The candy ones, I like them too. But what's more important than those Easter eggs and those candy and jelly bean, you need to know why you eating it. Is this making sense? You need to know why you eating that chocolate rabbit. Is this making sense? If you're eating turkey or ham and having a good, you need to know why you're celebrating. You need to know why. Is that making sense? So peach cobbler and well, oops. Okay. Let's go a little bit further. Let's go. Wow, that did hit me. So we'll talk a little bit about the scientific method. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then the historical criteria. What is the criteria for historical evidence? And then we want to look at the reliability of the historical evidence that surrounds the foundation of the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We'll look at the historical foundational evidence and the reliability of that evidence. Okay? Amen. So the 9 things. So let's kind of get into this. What time? Okay. Not going to go that far today. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to some very important people, very intelligent people understood this. I'm just going to talk about 4 of them. Just four right now. So the first person is Professor Thomas Arnold. Professor Thomas Arnold, 14 years. Headmaster at Rugby University, chair of modern history at Oxford University. So 14 years. What am I saying to you when I say this? I'm saying this person has a career and a reputation to stake what he says on. Okay, so he's 14 years, headmaster of Rugby University and the chair of modern history at Oxford University. This is what he said, and I quote, I know, where's my little pointer? I know of no one fact in the history of mankind which is proved by better and fuller evidence of every sort to the understanding of a fair inquirer than the great sign which God has given us, that Christ died and rose from the dead. Reputation is standing on this. Yes, it is this making sense? 14 years, headmaster at Rugby University and chair of modern history at Oxford University. Reputation stands. You can't make a statement like that with that kind of background without knowing what we're talking about. Is this making sense? Because people will make sense, everybody? Let's look at one more. Dr. Simon Greenleaf. Dr. Simon Greenleaf, professor of law at Harvard University. Dr. Greenleaf was very instrumental in creating I think it's the 12 volumes of a work called the Treaty of Evidence. The Treaty of Evidence is the same rules that we use in court today to govern evidence and how we evaluate it. In the United States, actually it's international. He is the one that created the treaty, or I think it's a 12-volume treaty, of how to handle evidence in a court of law. This is who this is. Okay, y'all with me? Yes. Okay. And he said, and I quote, according to the law of legal evidence used in courts of law, there is, where's my little pointer? There is more evidence for the historical fact of the resurrection of Jesus Christ than for just about any other event in history. Can somebody say, you staking your reputation on this? You better be right. Is this making sense? Amen. The resurrection. This is somebody that's staking their reputation on the fact that somebody died and came back alive from the grave. Amen. We call him Jesus Christ. Amen. I'm not going faith, would you? I'm just going history. Is this making sense? Before we go faith, you actually need to know the historical fact. Make sense? So that's two. Let's look at another very important scholar. Dr. John Singleton Copley, Attorney General, Great Britain, 3 times High Chancellor of England, and elected as High Steward of the University of Cambridge. Somebody say you got a reputation. You got to watch what you say because you got a reputation. So Dr. Copley said, and I quote, "I know pretty well what evidence is. And I tell you, such evidence as that for the resurrection has never been broken down yet." Not yet. You and I know it's never going to be broken down. Just, you got a reputation. You might want to make sure you know what you're talking about. Let's look at another. Chief Justice of England, Lord Darling, once said, "No intelligent jury in the world could fail to bring in a verdict that the resurrection story is true." No intelligent jury in the world. I just think it's probably a good idea, Rick, for us to know that we're not the only one that think this. We may not be Lord or Chancellor or High whatever of Great Britain, or but you might want to know that there's some more people that actually believe this. Is this making sense? So I'm just going to stop with that. But there's a huge community. If you start to research this, there's a huge community of very intelligent people that has huge reputations that are believing and coming out and saying, Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Amen. Colleges would have you think that's silly. Yeah. But I'm just telling you the real truth of the matter. Okay. Let's go a little bit further. Okay, the resurrection foretold. It's amazing to me how the Lord orchestrates, JoJo. Just think. Rick, think about this. You walking with your friend, and your friend says, you know, I'm going to go down here to Pomona, and when I get there, they're going to arrest me. Now, already I'm looking at you now. I'm looking at you. And Carmela, when they arrest me, they're gonna take me before certain ones, the chief justice, the high priest, or whoever, the high whatever, and they're going to condemn me to death, and they're going to kill me. I'm looking real strong at you, and I'm looking at you like you really strange now. How do you know what they're going to do in Pomona, you here in San Bernardino? And then you say something else to me that's really off. In 3 days, I'm going to get up. How many of us would hang with that kind of friend? How many of us know that if that happened to us, and it did happen, it would change you in 3 days? Look at. So Jesus started this, and He actually predicted that he would rise on the third day. Now, here's the situation. He had already fed 5,000 before, and he had the people were hanging with him. They were out here. They'd been with him, Carmela, for 3 days now, and the disciples was talking about, Sheila, send the people home. I think it was 7,000 of them now. Send the 4,000. No, more than that. Send the people home. Send the people home. And Jesus looked at them and he had compassion. He said, I'm not going to send these people home. They've been with me 3 days and they haven't had nothing to eat. And so he said, well, Preacher Ben, he said, well, what do we have? And so they said, well, we have 7 loaves and some fish. And so Jesus said, well, bring it here. And so he broke it, Jojo, he broke it and gave it to the disciples and told them, pass it out. And what they ended up doing was feeding 4,000 men and women and children with 7 loaves and a few fishes. And so at that point, the Pharisees saw it. You know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they always are sitting on the side looking and stuff. And so they wanted to ask Jesus some question, you know, trying to trick him and all that kind of stuff. Show me a sign. April, they come up talking about, show me a sign. And so Jesus said, look, you know, I ain't going to show you no sign. And in so many words, you wouldn't even recognize it. I'm just kind of paraphrasing now. You wouldn't recognize it if I did show it to you. You wouldn't believe it. If I showed it, you showed you a sign. And so when he went on, and when he got away from them, got on the boat, a superstar, and when they got on the other side of the lake, the disciples came to him. They said, what do you think about this? And Jesus started the dialogue with them and said, who do men say that I am? And my friend Peter spoke up, you know, he said, some say you Elijah, Elias, and some call you prophets, some say you this and some that. And Jesus got it, Chandra, he brought it a little bit closer in. He said, so who do you say that I am? You know, Rick, who do you? Brenda, who do you? Sheila, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? And Peter, that's my buddy, Peter. Yeah, that's my buddy because he got us out of a lot of trouble because of his mouth. Because the rest of the disciples wouldn't say nothing. And if it was left like that, it's a lot of stuff we wouldn't know. But Peter got us a lot of information and got in trouble doing it. Who do you say that? And Peter said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said to Peter, say, you know what, Peter? Flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you, but my Father which is in heaven. And thou, and Jesus spoke to Peter, said, now thou art Peter. Brittany said, and upon this rock I'm going to build my church, and the very gates of hell is not going to prevail against it. Okay? And so then Jesus began from that moment on. Once he revealed, he said, now don't go tell nobody who I am. Now that you know for real who I am, don't tell nobody. Don't tell folks. And then he started, Madam President, he started then to tell them of the vision of the Father. He started to talk about his purpose. You know, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. And when I get there, I'm going to be killed. And in 3 days, this little pretty baby. I'm going to be killed. And then 3 days later, I'm going to rise from the dead. And Peter, Peter like, well, hold up, Jesus. That's not going along with our plan. That ain't what we got figured out for you. That's not the plan. You got it wrong. Anybody know anything about getting the plan wrong, Yeah, Jesus started talking about, well, you're going to have to suffer. You're going to have to, wait, hold up. I didn't come in here to do all of that. What's up with that? I came for all the goodies. And I know ain't nobody in here came for the goodies. And so Jesus said, get thee behind me, Satan. Not Peter, just the concept. Is that making sense? Not the man. The man, Peter, is the one that God gave the revelation to. But the concept of, I don't want to go through this, or I don't want you to go through this, or I don't want the will of God to be different from what I want. Jesus said, can anybody ever got caught up in that? I don't want God's will to be different from what I want. Don't raise your hand. Don't raise it. I think everybody could raise them. I could raise both of my hands. Just tell you, if we just wanted to be truthful in here, I could raise both of my hands and my feet, but I'd probably fall down. Okay. And so it is at that point, Jesus is talking, Rose, and he's saying, this is what God's will is. And from that point on, Jesus began to reveal to them. Now, it's recorded. What we just talked about is recorded in Matthew's here. It is recorded in Matthew 16, 21 through 22, where Jesus did it. And then Mark picked it up, and Mark recorded it. And not only did Mark record it, but Luke recorded it. All of the four Gospels record the fact that Jesus talked about his death, burial, and resurrection before it happened. And the significance of that is that story I just gave you. What if you had someone telling you this and it hadn't happened yet? Is that making sense? So you would think, if you told me a story like that, I would think one of two things. You either crazy or you trying to trick me. Is that making sense? You either a lunatic or you're a deceiver. But the fact that it happened like he said proves the fact that he is actually who he said he is. Is that making sense, everybody? Let's go a little bit further. So let's look again now at some historical basis here. Let's take a little bit look at it. Evidence for Jesus Christ comes from many written documents from the first century. Many written documents from the first century. This becomes hugely important. Okay, so 39 ancient sources, in addition to the New Testament, such as Pliny the Younger, who was actually governor of Rome. He was a governor of Rome and a historian. Josephus, which was a Jewish historian. And the Talmud, which is a Jewish document of books a lot like the Torah. And it's a lot of Old Testament writings in there and some other things in there. And it's historically based, and there's a lot of information in there. And so refers to the life of Christ, his teaching, crucifixion, and his resurrection outside of the New Testament Gospels. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay, so the statement from, and I want you to go here and everybody look at it. The statement from that's found in 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 8, was written from 8 to 20 years after Jesus' death. Now, we use this statement in our communion. We use it in our communion. And here's why this is really important. Because, and I'll get into this much more when we talk about historical proof and why historical documents are important, how you verify it. Here's two concepts. The more historical documents that you have about something, along with the closer that historical document is to the date of the actual thing that you're talking about, is one of the ways that they verify the truth of the document. For example, I think it's Julius Caesar. I think there's 6. First of all, there is no original documents of anything left. Everything is copies now. Everything is copy. Even the New Testament is copies. Is this making sense? So how do we do this? Well, I think Caesar, I think it's 7 700 copies of the original, not the original, the earliest copies of the writings of Julius Caesar. 700, I think 710 copies. Now, I may be wrong, so don't quote me on this. I'll correct if I'll check again, and then I'll correct it next week if I'm wrong. 710 of them. And the nearest to the time is 1,300 years. Yet we take his documents as proof. That is truth. Is that making sense? 700 copies, 1,300 years later. For the New Testament, there is over 5,000 copies within 8 years of the actual event. What does that say? That says there's more collaborating evidence that is verifiable for the New Testament than any other event in history. That's why these heavyweights are going on record. Is this making sense? This is why they're saying, I believe in the resurrection. There is more proof of it than anything else in history. Making sense to everybody? Okay, so let's go a little bit further. What does it say? You have it? You have it?
Yes.
1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 8. What does that say?
For I delivered unto you, first of all, that which I also received.
Hold it, preacher. Paul is telling the Corinthian church, I delivered to you, first of all, that which I have received. Look at somebody say, now he's writing this 8 years later. Y'all with me? So he must have received it before he wrote it. Ooh. So most historians estimate the actual time that Paul got this was 3 years from the resurrection date of, well, the actual, they measure it by the death date. 3 years from the death date of Jesus Christ, Paul received this information. What does that mean to you and me? That means there wasn't not enough time to corrupt it. Not enough time to corrupt it. And oral testimony is always self-correcting. If you hear and I'm here and I'm telling somebody a story and you was there and I get it wrong, you correct it. No, that wasn't quite the way it was. Is that making sense? So 3 years of the date Paul received this message that he's giving to the Corinthian church. I received. Read it again, Roger. I received what?
For I have delivered unto you, first of all that which I also received.
I've delivered unto you what I've also received.
How that Christ died for our sins according to...
How that Christ, 3 years now, how that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures. 3 years from the event. Y'all with me?
Yes.
We can believe Julius 1,300 years. But why is it people try to get you not to believe the New Testament about Jesus at 3 years? Oh, they done made all of that up. They done corrupted it. They changed it. They added stuff. 3 years from the event. Is this making sense? But no question about Julius. 13 years with only 700 copies. 1,300. Is this making sense? Somebody is trying to, and I really think it has a lot to do with the demonic influence on the world today. Is that making sense? Because if you don't know this, it's easy to trick you. Is that making sense? You really don't have your foundation sure. You can be talking about I walk by faith, but ultimately you're going to have to know this to stand on the faith you walk by. Is that you're going to have to know this. This is the one opportunity, the one time that God took great detail to prove to you Thank you. Leave you a witness to prove to you that he has power over every situation. There is no religion, none, nowhere, that functions on the foundation that someone rose from the dead. They're going to tell you about prophets. Where the prophet come from? Where the prophet now? They'll tell you about somebody that God's message. Where he at now? Is this making sense? But they will not stake their whole concept, their whole theology on the fact that that no one rose from the dead except Christianity. It is the only one that stakes the whole concept of Christianity based off of Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and then have historical proof to back it up. Oh, I hope I'm helping you. Yes. Is this making sense, church? Okay. So read some more, Roger.
And that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day according to the scriptures, and that he was seen of Cephas, then of the 12.
Okay, so hold up. So right away, Paul says, look, I'm delivering unto you what was delivered to me. This is 8 years after Jesus died. He's talking to this church. Is that making sense? He got it, most credible historians say, within 3 years of the time Jesus died. Paul got this revelation. He got this from probably some of the disciples. Now while I'm talking about disciples, I need to let you make sure you understand this. The first book that was probably written was the book of Mark. Not in the order that we have it, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Actually, Mark's book was probably the first book that was actually written. Is that making sense? Then Matthew and Luke, and the final book was John. Now, you need to know that Matthew was an original disciple. John was an original disciple, and so was Peter, an original disciple. Now, Mark probably got most of the stuff that he got in his gospel from Peter. Okay, I'm just talking history now. You can go and just check your history. You got the internet, you can check your history and find this. Most of Mark came from Peter, who was original. Y'all follow me? Most of Luke's gospel came from Paul. Ooh. Paul wasn't a disciple, but Paul was around. He was around. In fact, he was hung up with the Sanhedrins doing that thing, trying to crucify and condemn the Jews. But most of Luke's gospel actually came from Paul. Y'all with me? Okay. So Paul is saying, read it again. I don't want to get caught.
Verse 4. And that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day according to the scriptures.
He was buried. He's talking about Jesus now. He's talking to the Corinthian church about Jesus. He said, he was buried, he rose again the third day, and he did it according to the
scriptures.
In other words, the scripture gives you a detailed, truthful version of what actually took place. Y'all with me? Read some more.
And that he was seen of Cephas, and then of the 12.
Cephas was the high priest. Now, he was seen of Cephas, and then who? The 12 disciples. Okay? Now, what is Paul saying? I've just given you this huge statement. Now I'm backing my statement up with witnesses. Okay? I'm backing it up with witnesses. I just gave you this huge statement that Jesus Christ actually died, he was buried, and he rose again on the third day, just like the scripture said he did. Amen. Now, I'm going to back that up with witnesses. And so he starts to name people that you can go check to verify that what he's saying is true. Because they were still alive. Is that making sense? The oral tradition is self-adjusting. It's self-adjust. If I'm telling you I'm telling you something that's not correct, and you was there, wait a minute, hold up, James, that ain't exactly the way it worked. See it? See it? Okay, and so read some more.
After that, he was seen of about above 500 brethren at once.
In other words, there's not only these people I've told you, but there are 500, at least 500 people that seen Jesus alive after he died. You kind of need to know that. You got to need to know. 500 people? And most of them are still alive while I'm writing this? In other words, if you don't believe me, there's 500 and some people you can go check and see if this is true with. Go ask them. Because all of them ain't dead yet. Make sense? You kind of need to know about that. Read, preacher.
Of whom the greater part remain unto this present, but some are fallen asleep.
Some are dead, but the greater part is still alive.
After that, he was seen of James, then of all the apostles.
So hold up. What is the significance here? You see, James is Jesus' half-brother. But James did not follow Christ.
No, he didn't.
Is this making sense? In fact, he kind of had a little thing in him about Jesus. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Anybody ever? So James had a little problem with Jesus.
Big problem.
Is this making sense? It actually wasn't until Jesus rose from the dead that James actually believed. It wasn't until he rose that James actually began to believe in Jesus. And then he became one of the heads of the church.
Amen.
Is this making sense? How many of you understand that it's people that's really close to you is the hardest sometimes to convince?
Right. Amen.
Make sense? But you got to be careful who you tell your vision to. Lord called me to something. You might want to hold that for a minute. Be careful who you let know about that. Let me go on. Go on, Roger. Do we finish there?
No, verse 8. And last of all, he was seen of me also.
So Paul says, and last of all, I'm telling you what I know. Is this making sense? I told you about all these other people, but here, let me just add this last one. I'm telling you what I know.
Amen.
Make sense? Now Paul wrote almost a third of the New Testament. Is that making sense? We take his letters and live by. So what I'm saying to you is that the same Paul that we believe in his letters, that we think God has inspired, who God anointed, is the same one that says this. I seen him. You might want to know that. Make sense, church? Okay, a little bit further. Okay, so most critical historians agree that documents take more than 20 years to become corrupted to the point that it is lacking factual basis or historical validity. Now, what does that mean? That means I tell you, so I whisper in your ear, and then you tell the next person, and then you tell the next person, and you tell the next person. Y'all remember the story? And then when it get back to you, it's different than what you... Okay. So that's playing in this. And the other thing is playing in this is this. So I write an essay paper, and I give it to 5 of you and tell you to copy it. And so you copy it, and then you give it to 5 other people, and they copy it. And you give it to 5, and they give it to 5 other people, and they copy it. So how many of us know we're going to have a whole bunch of different stories? We're going to have a whole bunch of different stories in that they are authentic to the person that wrote it, that copied it. You may miss a comma that I put. You may put a semicolon when I put a comma. You may put a period where I put a question mark. Is this making sense? But what you have to understand is the context. Does the context of what I originally wrote, does it still exist in the document? That's what happens in the New Testament. Somebody may have put a comma where there was no comma. Is this making sense? But the context of the New Testament is still the same in all 5,000 copies that we have on record. I guess somebody say, we have some reliable stuff that we're living by. Amen. Make sense? Amen. Okay, so let's go a little bit further. Okay, several witnesses report appearances of Christ after the resurrection. These reports are recorded in the Gospels, in the letters of Paul, and other letters in the New Testament, dating from 25 to 60 years after the death of Jesus. Several reports. Y'all with me? Okay, let me go a little bit further. I'm moving too fast, right? Because I know this is a lot of context, a lot of information. Okay. So Peter, you might just want to highlight it. Peter said, I am an eyewitness. Y'all remember Peter, he one of the original disciples. Peter was talking to the church. He said, I'm an eyewitness. I ain't just telling you a bunch of crazy stuff. I was there. I saw it. Is this making sense? Amen. Read it. 1:16, 2 Peter.
For we have not followed cunning devised fables.
We haven't come up with no tricky stories.
When we made known unto you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but were witnesses of his majesty.
Eyewitnesses.
I'm sorry.
We didn't follow no cleverly devised stories to tell you. No funny stuff. No stuff that sound good to your ears. But we were eyewitnesses of actually took. This Peter talk. He said we were in other words, Peter said, I was standing there. I saw it with my own eye. My own eyeballs witnessed this. Is that making sense? Probably something you might want to know. I mean, if we're going to read Peter, we might want to know if he was there. Make sense, everybody? Okay, let's go a little bit further. Okay. More than 100 prophecies found in the Old Testament were fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Over 100 prophecies found in the Old Testament was fulfilled in Jesus. Just another way of understanding God's doing something here. He's screaming at you, telling you that I am making a way for you. Make sense? Okay, let's go a little bit further. So, statistician Peter Stoner, big time statistician, reports that the probability of just 8 of these prophecies about one person being fulfilled by chance is, I don't know if you can see this, 1 in 100 million. 8 prophecies about one person actually coming true. The chance is 1 in a trillion, over a trillion. One chance in over a trillion. Is that making sense, everybody? So what does that say to you and me? This is intentional and not by chance. It's intentional. God did this on purpose. This didn't just blow up and happen. Y'all see it? Yes. intentional. God did this on purpose, designed for you to get a grip on the fact that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Why? Because the power of God is demonstrated in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Nobody else has ever rose from the dead and stayed alive. Just so you know what salvation is based on. Nobody else has the claim. Nobody else can make that claim. Hare Krishna cannot make that claim. Buddha cannot make that claim. Is this making sense? Mormonism cannot make that claim. They'd be ridiculed because there's no proof of their claim. But Christianity can make the claim because there's proof of it. Is this making sense? There is historical. You ain't got to be saved to believe this. There is historical facts that create evidence, like Dr. From Harvard said. There's evidence. You don't have to be saved to understand this. All you have to do is follow the evidence. Make sense? Okay, let's go a little bit further. Historical basis. Consider the documents fulfilled prophecy of one person. Now, I'm going to try this. See if it works. I'm not sure. But I got a little video that I want you to look at. Just consider this. All of the documents fulfilled in prophecy by one person. Hold up now, DJ. I'm going to try to shift to it. Okay, try it now. I don't know if this is going to work. Hope it do. Know for sure that he did this. Because can't no one person do this. And it can't, our statistician told us, this can't happen by chance. Is that making sense? This cannot just happen. You can't flip a coin and this happened. This cannot happen by chance. Is it making sense? So God went through specific measures to make sure that you understand. Back in Genesis, I am going to bruise your head. The minute he messed up minute he got Adam to mess up. After that, God said to the devil, he said, look, there's going to come, I'm going to send one. In Genesis, he's going to bruise your head. You're going to mess with his heels, but he going to bruise your head. In other words, you're not going to mess with my creation and leave. I'm going to fix this. It's not going to stay like this. You might think you won, but I'm going to fix this. Is this making sense? Because I said it was good. God said it. He looked at it. Sheila, he looked at his creation. He looked at mankind. He looked at the dominion that he gave you. He looked at everything he did for you and said, it's good. And God is not one to let nobody else change what he do. He gonna fix that thing. So 400 years later, we celebrate Christmas. Why? Because God said, I'm gonna fix it. Here comes Jesus. Why did he come like that? Because of prophecy. Is this making sense? Why is prophecy important? Because it is a way for you to believe God. You begin to see one prophecy after another prophecy, after another prophecy, after another prophecy. God is doing what he says. He's doing, and once you understand God does what he says, your faith level grows. Oh, I hope I'm helping you. I'm helping me.